Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum students. Welcome to our 28th lecture of MTH 108 Business Math 1. Today we will continue with our chapter 13, which is about Introduction to Probability Theory. But let's first revise what we have studied so far in this chapter. In this chapter, first we have studied the basic notions of sets and the elements of the sets, how we can represent our set in two ways, that is the enumeration method and the descriptive method, the set notations and the notation for the element of a set, and the notation for the number of elements in a set. Then we have studied some special types of sets, which include universal set, complement of a set, null set and subsets, and the meaning of these special types of sets with the help of the Venn diagram. Then in the lecture of set, we have studied the set operations. First we have studied the equality of sets, the union and the intersection of sets, and the properties of set operations. In our previous lecture we have studied the number of elements in a set, that is how we can count the number of elements when we are taking the union of two sets. Then we have studied the counting method, and we have seen the tree diagram, that how we can use our tree diagram to count the number of elements or the number of possible outcomes from a given set. Then we have seen the fundamental principle of counting, and using this concept we have defined the permutation, that is the number of possible outcomes when the arrangement or the order of a set of the things matters. Then we have seen the permutation counting rule and the formula for the permutation using the factorial form. After this we have also seen the combination of items or combination of objects, that is the number of possible outcomes when order does not matter, and the relationship between the permutation and combination. Using this relationship we have defined the formula for the combination, and we have seen some examples where what type of operation of combination should be used, that is either we have to use the product of combinations or the sum of combinations. Today we will study about sample space and events. Now the notion of probability is associated with random process or random experiments. Probability deals with uncertainty. For example, if we consider the following statements, all these statements contain an element of uncertainty. For example, I will probably go shopping after work, or chances are it will rain this afternoon. The probability of heads is 1/2. The odds on pacemaker to place are 3:2. 3 out of 5 smokers develop lung cancer. All these statements, they contain an element of uncertainty, which means that either something will happen or not. We are not sure about the outcome. But one thing we clearly know, that is we know what are the possible outcomes. For example, in our first example, the possible outcomes are either I will go for shopping after work or I will not go. But I am not sure what will happen after I finish my work. Similarly, in our example 5, 3 out of 5 smokers develop lung cancer is an uncertain situation. We know the number of possible outcomes, but it may be possible that none of the smokers develop lung cancer. It may be possible that all the 5 smokers develop lung cancer. So these statements deal with the probability or with the uncertainty, in which we know the set of possible outcomes, but we do not know which outcome will occur. So we hear and read these kind of probabilistic statements every day, and the question arises that can these statements be analyzed mathematically? To analyze these statements mathematically, or to give a certain answer or the possible outcome, we define a random experiment. A random experiment is a process which results in one of a number of possible outcomes. As I said earlier, that is, we know the possible outcomes, and by random experiment we mean a process which gives us one of the possible outcomes. That is, the possible outcomes are known prior to the performance of an experiment, but one cannot predict with certainty which particular outcome will result. So, in other words, random experiment is a process whose outcome cannot be predicted, but we know the set of all the possible outcomes. For example, if we flip a coin and we consider that the coin does not lie on its edge, then we know the set of possible outcomes. That is, either by flipping a coin we will obtain a head or we will obtain a tail. But by flipping a coin we do not know which outcome will occur, that is, either the head will occur or the tail will occur. Similarly, rolling a die is an uncertain situation. For example, we have a die with 6 numbers on it from 1 to 6. So the set of possible outcomes is ranging from 1 to 6. But when we roll a die, we do not know which outcome will occur. That is, we will obtain the number 1 or 2, 3 or so on up to the number 6. Another example, drawing a card from a well-shuffled deck. Then we have 52 cards in a deck. Okay, we know the set of possible outcomes, but drawing one card from a well-shuffled deck, we do not know which card will come out. So this is a situation of uncertainty. That is, we know the set of possible outcomes, but we do not know which outcome will occur. So all these examples are the examples of random experiment. That is, we have picked up or draw a random card from a well-shuffled deck, and we do not know which card will it be. For example, 3 out of 5 smokers develop lung cancer. The number of possible outcomes is again known, but the type of experiment or the process which is happening is a random experiment. That it may happen that 3 smokers develop lung cancer, or 4 smokers develop lung cancer, or all of the 5 smokers develop lung cancer. So we cannot say with certainty what will happen in the future, but we know what are the maximum possibilities which may happen. Another example is defective products produced during the manufacturing in a random manner. You are manufacturing some product and there are many chances. For example, you are manufacturing nails. There are many chances that the nail or the common pins which are manufactured are defective. They are not in proper use. They cannot be used properly. Again, this is an example of random experiment. That is, we are producing a product. Either the product will be able to use or the product will not be able to use. So either the product will be acceptable for further use or defective, that is, we cannot use it further. So, but we cannot say that which thumb pin or which common pin will be defective. There can be any of them or there can be many of them. The times between the arrivals of telephone calls at a telephone exchange. Again, this is an example of a random experiment. That is, we cannot say with certainty that what will be the time between the 2 telephone calls at a telephone exchange. We know the set of possible outcomes, that at a telephone exchange a call may come at any time, but what will be the difference between the 2 calls, we cannot say. The difference can be 1 second, 1 minute, after 30 minutes, after 1 hour. This is a situation of uncertainty, but we know the set of all the possible outcomes, and we cannot say that what will occur from this set of possible outcomes. So this type of process or this type of experiment is known as random experiment. Then, once we perform an experiment or the process which is happening, we call it as an experiment. Then each repetition of an experiment can be thought of as a trial. For example, we perform an experiment, that is, we flip a coin. Flipping a coin once is our first trial. Okay, then we perform the same experiment again, that is we flip the coin again. Flipping the coin second time is our second trial. So each repetition of an experiment can be thought of as a trial, and each trial has an observable outcome. Okay, then we collect the set of all possible outcomes which we know from our random experiment, and we call this collection as the sample space. That is, the set of all possible outcomes for an experiment is called the sample space, denoted by capital S, such that each outcome corresponds to exactly one element in our sample space. That is, whatever the possibility of the outcome is, corresponding to that outcome, there should be an element in our sample space. And the elements of the sample space S are called the simple outcome or the sample points. This NS denotes the size of a sample space or the number of elements of a sample space. This denotes the size or the number of elements of a sample space. If a sample space contains finite number of points, sample points, then the sample space is called as a finite sample space. And if a sample space contains infinite sample points, then it is called an infinite sample space. So up to now we have seen that what do we mean by a random experiment, and the outcomes of a random experiment come with uncertainty, but we know the set of all possible outcomes. Okay, now the set of all possible outcomes, when they are collected together, they are called as the sample space for that particular experiment. And the elements of the sample space, which are basically the possible outcomes, they are called as the sample points. And if we have finite sample points, which means that we have finite outcomes, possible outcomes, then the sample space is known as the finite sample space, and otherwise infinite sample space. For example, flipping a coin is a very simple example to understand what will be the sample space and what will be the possible outcomes. If we flip a coin, then and we consider that the coin does not lie on its edge, that is, it does not stand vertically, then there are only two possibilities when we flip a coin, which means that the possible outcomes will be either we will obtain a head or we will obtain a tail. So when we flip a coin, we will have only two options. So these are the set of all possible outcomes, head or a tail. And we consider considering that the coin does not lie on its edge. Then our sample space S will consist of two elements, that two outcomes, that is, one outcome will be head, denoted by capital H, and the second outcome will be tail, denoted by capital T. And this is a finite sample space. Clearly we can see that the sample points are only two, and our given sample space is a finite sample space. Okay, so what is the size of the sample space? That is the number of sample points, which is equals to 2. And if what we have said in the definition of our sample space, that each outcome corresponds to exactly one element in S. In this case we have two possible outcomes, so each outcome will correspond to exactly one element in our sample space. That is, if we obtain the head by flipping a coin, this outcome will correspond to one element in our sample space. If we obtain the tail by flipping a coin, this outcome will correspond to exactly one element in our sample space. So each outcome corresponds to exactly one element in our sample space. That is, each outcome corresponds to exactly one element in our sample space S. Okay, we consider one more example. That is the same example of a coin, but this time we are flipping a coin twice, which means that what will be the set of possible outcomes? The set of possible outcomes will be our sample space S actually. So if we flip a coin first, we can find the set of possible outcomes by using our tree diagram. So if we flip a coin first, we have two possibilities. That is, either we will obtain a head or a tail. Then we flip the coin again, which means that again we have two possibilities for each of them. That is, either we will obtain a head or a tail. So this is our stage 1, flipping a coin once. This is our stage 2, flipping a coin twice. And what are the possible outcomes? The possible outcomes are either we will obtain head head, head tail, tail head, and tail tail. So our sample space S will be the collection of all the possible outcomes, that is head head, head tail, tail head, and tail tail. And this sample space is clearly a finite sample space with number of sample points equals to 4. Okay, if we look carefully at our sample space, for example in our second example, then we do not have to mix the sample points with the possible outcomes of the permutations and the possible outcomes of the combinations. In the case of, and particularly in the case of combinations, in the case of combinations, the order does not matter, and we ignore the outcomes which have the same objects but different order, which means that in case of combination of this example, we will have three possible combinations, that is head head, head tail or tail head, and tail tail. So the sample points should not be mixed with the possible outcomes of the combination. Okay, now we have seen two examples, two very simple examples from where we can understand the finite or infinite sample space, the possible outcomes, and the number of our, or the size of our sample space. Let us consider one more example, that is the time between arrivals of telephone calls at the telephone exchange. Now the sample space of this experiment, which measures the time between the arrivals of telephone calls at a telephone exchange, will be defined as the sample space denoted by capital S, time, such that time is measured in seconds, and the time is definitely greater than equals to 0, which means that either the difference between the two telephone calls at a telephone exchange can be 0 second, can be 1 second, can be 2 second, can be 1 hour, and so on. So this type of sample space is an example of an infinite sample space, because we are starting from difference of 0 seconds between two calls at a telephone exchange, and the difference between two calls may vary, may be equals to 1 hour, 10 hours, or any number, any positive number. So this is an example of an infinite sample space, and the number or the size of the sample space cannot be determined. Okay. Now consider one more example of rolling a die. A die has 6 faces and each face is numbered from 1 to 6. So when we roll a die, we know the set of possible outcomes. That is, the set of possible outcomes of our sample space S in this case will be either we will obtain a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6. So when we roll a die once, the set of possible outcomes may be any one of these 6 outcomes. So this is an example of a finite sample space with the size of the sample space equals to 6. We may call the sample space as S1. Okay. If we roll a die, we can define the sample space in another form as the possible outcomes will be an even number comes and an odd number comes between 1 to 6. This is a sample space S2 defining the same experiment rolling a die. That is, if we roll a die, either we will obtain 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6, which means that either the number from 1 to 6 will be an even number or the number from 1 to 6 will be an odd number. So this S2 also defines a sample space of the same experiment, and which means that we can also write our sample space S2 as either the possible outcome is even or the possible outcome is odd, which means that in this case the size of the sample space S2 is equals to 2. That is, we will have one of the two possible outcomes, either the number will be even or the number will be odd, which means that from this example we have seen that for a particular experiment there are many ways to define the sample space, or there can be more than one sample space which defines the same experiment. Okay, now we have some remarks, and the first remark is which I have just said, that an experiment may have more than one sample space, and we have seen it in our previous example. Second remark is that when an experiment has more than one sample space, it will be our practice to consider only a sample space that gives sufficient details to answer all pertinent questions relative to an experiment, no matter how many sample space an experiment has. But in order to determine the answers of all the relevant questions of the experiment, we will have to consider only one sample space which answer all our required questions, and this sample space is usually called as the usual sample space. That is, in our example of rolling a die, that is in our previous example rolling a die, our sample space S1 having 6 sample points from 1 to 6 is our usual sample space, because this sample space will answer most of our questions related to the experiment. And our second sample space S2 consisting of 2 outcomes, that is either the outcome will be even or the outcome will be odd, will not give us much information about our relevant questions. Okay. Now we define another concept which related to the sample space, which is called as event. We are given an experiment, then the outcomes or the sample points are frequently classified into events. That is, we have a sample space, let's say the example of rolling a die, and this sample space has 6 outcomes. We classify these outcomes into our subgroups, and these classes are called as events. For example, in our previous case, in this example, we may classify our outcomes as one class as our set of all even outcomes, which means that we have grouped our outcomes in satisfying some particular property, and that group will be called an event. Which means that an event E, denoted by capital E, for an experiment is nothing but a subset of our sample space S. We have grouped our outcomes from the sample space satisfying some particular property, and that group will be a subset of our sample space called as an event. Event has a specific technical meaning in probability theory. The way in which events are defined depends upon the set of outcomes for which probabilities are to be computed. Okay. So how we define our event with the help of our Venn diagram? For example, this is our sample space S, and we say that an event E is a subset of our sample space. For example, this is our event, then our event E is a subset of our sample space, where our sample space is now acts as our universal set. So what will be the events in considering the example rolling a coin, in considering the example of flipping a coin twice? Our set of possible outcomes of our sample space in this example was head head, head tail, tail head, and tail tail. Okay. If we regroup our possible outcomes satisfying the property as getting at least one head, that is, we will collect all those possible outcomes which have at least one head. So our set will contain the possible outcomes as head head, head tail, and tail head, and we can clearly see that this grouping of outcomes satisfying the particular property that getting at least one head is a set known as an event, and we can clearly see that it is a subset of our sample space S. We can define one more event as getting no tails as our outcome. So what will be the possible outcomes we will have as head, head only, and this is a subset of our sample space. We may define another event as getting no head, which means that the possible outcomes which will satisfy this condition or which will come in this subset will be our outcome tail tail. So this is how we define our event. Event is nothing but the collection of points from the sample space or the collection of elements from the sample space which satisfy some particular property, and that collection is a set called as an event, and it is a subset of our sample space. If we consider the example of flipping a coin once, not rolling, then our sample space was two outcomes, either we will obtain a head or we will obtain a tail. Okay, if we define our event E1 as getting head only, then our event E1 will contain the outcome H only. Similarly, we can define our event as getting tail only, which means that in this case our possible outcome from our sample space will be the tail. Okay, if we consider our example of telephone calls, then the sample space defining our telephone calls was T, such that the time is measured in seconds and time is definitely greater than equals to 0. So this was our sample space obtained by defining the difference between the two telephone calls at a telephone exchange. If we define our event E1 as the collection of all those times such that whenever the difference between two telephone calls is less than or equals to 30 seconds, okay, we may define another event as the collection of all those points in which the difference between the two telephone calls is greater than 30 seconds. So we have seen that given an infinite sample space, the event, this was our infinite sample space, the events defined may be finite as our event E1, or the event defined or the event obtained may be infinite as our event E2. Now we suppose that an experiment consists of selecting 3 manufactured parts from a production process and observing whether they are acceptable or defective. We are asked to determine the sample space S, the outcomes in event exactly 2 acceptable parts, and the outcomes in event at least 1 defective part. Then first we have to determine our sample space, and then we will solve our part B and C, that is, then we will define our events in part B and C. The problem says that experiment is what about selecting 3 manufactured parts from a production process. Okay, and we have to observe that whether these 3 selected parts are acceptable or defective. Okay, first let us define our outcomes, type of outcomes we are interested in. Let capital A define as the manufactured part as acceptable, and capital D define as our manufactured part defective. Okay, then by using our tree diagram we start from here, and for the first part we have only 2 options, that is, either the first part will be acceptable or defective. This is our stage 1. Then we go to our stage 2. In stage 2, each part has again 2 options, that is, either this part is acceptable or defective, and same with the case of defective case, because our statement says that by selecting 3 manufactured parts. So in second stage, selecting the second manufactured part, we again have 2 options, that either the part is acceptable or defective, and same with the case of defective one. Then we go to our stage 3, that is the third part. In this case again we have 2 options for that part, that is, either the part will be acceptable or defective, and same with all of the rest of the 3. Okay, now we write our possible outcomes, which is our sample space S. So our sample space S will consist of a manufactured part consisting of product consisting of 3 parts. First case, when all the 3 parts are acceptable, A. So this is our first path. Second case, when the first part is acceptable, second part is acceptable, and the third part is defective, that is AAD. Third one will be, if we count from here, we have actually 8 possible outcomes. So the sample space contains 8 sample points. For the third sample point, the first part acceptable, second part defective, and third part acceptable, which is ADA. And for the fourth part, ADD. Okay, writing all these, we obtain our sample space as the other 4 sample points will be DDA and DDD. So this is our sample space with the size of the sample space as 8. It is a finite sample space. Now our first part, which we are asked to find, is the outcomes in the event exactly 2 acceptable parts. So our first part is the event E1, that is the outcomes which contain exactly 2 acceptable parts. Exactly 2 means the first sample point is excluded because the first sample point contains 3 acceptable parts. We have to find the outcomes which contain only 2 acceptable parts. So the possible outcomes will be AAD, ADA, and DAA. So these are the possible outcomes which satisfy the condition that the product has exactly 2 acceptable parts. Okay, so this is our event E1. Second event E2 is required to ask the outcomes with at least 1 defective part. That is, at least 1 part should be defective, which means that 2 parts defective is also acceptable, all the 3 parts defective is also acceptable. So our event E2 will be at least 1 means our second sample point AAD, ADA, ADD, DAA, DAD, because we are asked to find at least 1, which means that more than 1 are also allowed. So in defining the events, we have to be very careful in paying the attention on the words used, because the first event says exactly 2, which means that not less than 2, not greater than 2. The second event says that at least 1, which means that it can be greater than 1 but not less than 1. There should be at least 1 defective part. Can be 2 defective parts, can be 3 defective parts. So these are our required events defining where the outcomes satisfy the respective property. Now, by knowing these type of events, if we are asked to find the number of possible events from a given sample space, how we can find the number of possible events? So we are interested in knowing the number of events which can be obtained from a given sample space. Then the number of events from a given sample space, if our sample space has n elements, is nothing but 2 to the power n. That is 2 to the power of number of elements of our sample space. For example, in our first example, or for example, in this example, the sample space n has 8 elements. So the number of possible events which we can obtain from this sample space will be 2 to the power 8. So these are the possible events which can be obtained from this sample space. Okay. For example, if we flip a coin twice, Then flipping a coin twice. In this case, the sample space has 4 elements and the number of possible events which can be obtained from this sample space will be equals to 2 to the power 4. That is, we can obtain possible events from this sample space. Now there are some observations from the set of events. If our event consists of only one outcome, then it is called a simple event. For example, flipping a coin once, our sample space is the set of outcomes head and tail, and if we define our event E1 as head only, then this event contains only one outcome, which is head. So these type of events which contain only one outcome are known as the simple events. And if an event contains more than one outcomes, then it is called a compound event. For example, flipping a coin twice, our sample space contains 4 elements, which is head head, head tail, tail head, and tail tail, and we define our event as at least one head. Then our set of possible outcomes will be head head, head tail, and tail head. Here we have more than one outcome from our sample space, which means that this event is a compound event. Now, if the outcome of an experiment is a sample point in the event E, then the event is said to occur. For example, rolling a die, our sample space contains 6 sample points, and we define our event E1 as the outcomes 2, 4, 6, and the point says that if the outcome of an experiment is a sample point in our event E, then the event is said to occur. For example, if the outcome 2 occurs, or if the outcome is 2, and this 2 is a sample point in our event, which means that our event E1 should occur. Okay. Now, if a sample space is a subset, we know that a sample space is a subset of itself. So, it is to an event. That we know from our lecture of set operations that every set is a subset of itself. So, which means that sample space is also an event known as the certain event. And in case we are considering the certain event, it will always occur, no matter what the outcome is. On contrary to our first point says that if a point or sample point belongs to our event, then the event must occur. But if we have a certain event, that is, our event is the whole sample space, then it will definitely occur no matter what outcome we have. If our event contains no sample points, then it is a null set and it is called as impossible event. For example, considering the example of rolling a die, and we define our event as 7 occurs, then this 7 does not belong to our sample space. So it is not a sample point, which means that our event E is actually a null set, an empty set, and called as impossible event because this event never occurs. 7 cannot be obtained by rolling a die if the sides or the faces of the die are numbered from 1 to 6. The next observation is that events can sometimes be described in words. For example, for flipping a coin twice experiment, we can define our event in words as no heads, which means that our event will contain the outcome tail only. In words, we can also define one tail, which means that these two outcomes will be the elements of our event. At least one head, more than one head. So we can also define our events in words or in the descriptive form. Now we consider some more examples of our sample space. Suppose an urn contains 4 marbles of 4 different colors, that is, 1 marble of red color, 1 marble of pink color, 1 marble of black color, and 1 marble of white color. By looking at these examples, what we will come to know, that is the number or the size of the sample space. So suppose we have an urn which contains 4 marbles of 4 different colors, and a marble is drawn at random. That is, we have taken out 1 marble from the urn, we have noted its color, and is placed back into the urn. Then a marble is again randomly drawn and its color is noted. We are asked to describe the sample space and the number of the sample points. For example, if we denote the colors of our marbles as, let the colors be R, denoted for red, P for pink, B for black, and W for white. These are the colors of our marbles. Okay, this example is known as the example of with replacement. Why? Because the statement says that we are given with 4 marbles, we have taken out 1 marble and we have put it back into the urn. Then we have taken 1 marble again, which means that the marble which we have put back in our urn is allowed to be the second possible outcome. So what will be the sample space in this case? We will use our tree diagram to define our sample space. Suppose we start from here, and at our stage 1 we will perform this experiment only twice. That is, we will take out 1 marble, put it back, and then take out 1 marble again. So we have 2 stages of our experiment. At the first stage, what are the possible outcomes? We have 4 balls, which means that the possible outcomes at first stage will be 4. That is, either we will obtain a red ball, or a pink marble, or a black marble, or a white marble, because we are selecting the marbles randomly. Then we have put these marbles back, and at the second stage again we have 4 possibilities. That is, either the second marble taken out randomly will be the red marble again, the pink marble, the black marble, or the white marble. Same is the case, or same are the possibilities for the rest of the 3 colors of the marbles. That is, either we obtain a red marble, or pink, or a black, or white. Okay, and now from this tree diagram, by knowing this information, we can easily write down our sample space, that is the set of possible outcomes. So if we count from the right hand side of our tree diagram, we have actually 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4. We have actually 16 possible outcomes. Our possible outcomes are 16. So our sample space S will contain 16 sample points. That is, the first marble taken out is red, and the second marble taken out is red again, red pink, red black, red W, and writing all these combinations will be our sample space. We are also asked to find the number of sample points, or the size of our sample space. So in this case, the size of our sample space, we know the possible outcomes are 16, but is there any defined formula which can be used to find the size of our sample space? Yes. The formula is very simple, which is nothing but by using the basic counting principle. That is, at stage 1, how many possibilities we have? At stage 1 we have 4 possibilities, and at second stage how many possibilities we have for each of the possibility? At second stage, for each of the first marble we have again 4 possibilities. So we have 2 stages or 2 objects, which means that at the first place the possibility of obtaining a marble from an urn is 4, and then putting that marble again at the second stage we also have 4 possibilities of obtaining a marble. So the product of the first stage and the product of the second stage, we obtain the size of our sample space, which is 16. Now we consider the same example but with a slight change. This part we have said that we have solved with replacement. But if we are asked to find our sample space and the size of the sample space without replacement, which means that if 2 marbles are selected in succession without replacement and the colors are noted, which means that basically we have taken out any marble randomly from the urn, and we have not put it back into the urn again. We have put it separately, and then from the rest of the marbles we have taken out any marble randomly again. So in that case the sample space will have less sample points, but what will be the sample space? Again we will use our tree diagram, and we have the same 2 stages as in our previous case. In the first stage we have 4 possibilities, that either the marble taken out from the urn is red, pink, black or white, and then this marble is not put back again into the urn, which means then we are left with 3 marbles. So at the second stage we have 3 possibilities. That is, this red marble is not allowed to put back, so we have 3 possibilities that at the second stage either the second marble will be of pink color, of black color or of white color. Same is the case when a pink marble is taken out first. At the second stage the possibility will be that the second marble will be either of red color, black color or white color, and continuing for the rest of the 2, either the red, the pink or white, and for white we say that either the red or pink or black, which means that our possible outcomes or our sample space S in this case will be these are, if we count from the right side of our tree diagram, we have 3 plus 3 plus 3 plus 3. So our possible outcomes are actually 12 in this case, 4 less than the example of with replacement. And the possible outcomes are red pink, red black, red white, and up to white red, white pink and white black. And since we cannot draw the tree diagram in every case, so what will be the size of our sample space or the number of sample points? It will be the product of our first stage into the product of our possible outcomes of the second stage. That is, we are using our basic counting principle. At the first stage we have 4 possibilities, but at the second stage we are left with 3 possibilities for each of the color, which means that this sample space will have 12 sample points. Okay, now we have seen one example in which we have seen that how we can calculate our desired sample space and what will be the size of our sample space. Let's look at one more example. We have a pair of dice, which means that we have 2 die. They are rolled once, and for each die the number that turns up is observed. We are asked to describe the sample space. Okay, we start from here, and since we have less numbers we can use our tree diagram to understand it clearly. Then we have the first stage, which is the possible outcomes of die 1, and the second stage, the possible outcomes of die 2. Then the possible outcomes of the die 1 are 6, that is, we may obtain any of these outcomes from the die 1 when it is rolled. Again, the possible outcomes for the die 2 are 6, which means that each of this has 6 possibilities. And so on. So our possible outcomes are 6 plus 6 up to 6 times. So our possible outcomes are 36, which means that our sample space will have 36 sample points. And how we will write these sample points? In the form of ordered pair, because we have a pair of dice. So in the form of ordered pair, which means that when we have rolled the dice, this pair of dice, the first die turned up 1 and the second die also turned up 1. The first die turned up 1 and the second die turned up 2. The first die turned up 1 and the second die turned up 3, and continuing so on up to when the first die turned up 6 and the second die turned up 6. So these are the 36 sample points which we have obtained from our experiment of rolling a pair of dice. So by knowing our basic counting principle, by using this principle, we will find the size of our sample space, which is the product of the first stage and of the possible outcomes of the second stage. So at first stage we have 6 possible outcomes, and at second stage we have again 6 possible outcomes. So our possible outcomes is the product of 6 with itself, which is 36, which means that this is the size of our given sample space. Now we have done enough examples in which we can see that how we can determine the sample space and the size of the sample space. Now we come to some properties of event. Since event is a subset of our sample space S, then we can use Venn diagram to represent our events and the sample space. Okay, that is, if this is our sample space S and this is our event E, then our sample space S acts as the universal set here. Now since events and sample space can also be sometimes represented by a Venn diagram, so with the help of this Venn diagram we can also show other set operations of event, that is the complement of event, the union of two events, the intersection of two events, and so on. First is we want to show that our event is definitely a subset of our sample space. This we have also shown, but just to make it more clear again, if this is our event E, then definitely our event is a subset of our sample space S. Now what will be the complement of our event? By using our Venn diagram, if this is our sample space S and this is our event E shown by the circular area, then its complement will be defined as the complement of a normal set, because event is a set. So this region, this lined region, is the complement of our event E. Okay, then the union of events. Suppose we have two events E and F, and we want to see the union of these two events. Then this is our sample space F, and this is our event E, and this is our event F. Then the union is this region, that is the union of two events E and F. Okay, the intersection of two events, we have two events E and F with a sample space S. This is our event E and this is our event F. Then this region, this common region, is the intersection of our events. Okay, and how we define these four properties? That is, first property is that our E is a subset of S. E is a subset of our sample space S, and the complement E complement of an event E contains which sample points? So E complement contains the sample points, all those sample points which do not belong to our event E. Sample points in S that are not in E. And in the case of union and intersection, in the case of union, we say that the union of two events contains the all sample points which are either in E or in F or in both. It is just a normal definition of union of two sets. And the intersection of two events is the collection of all those sample points which are common to both. Okay. Now for the event, that is the union of two events E and F to occur, what is the condition? At least one of the events E and F must occur. If we are taking the union of two events E and F, then for the event, because E union F is again a set, a subset of our sample space S, then for this event E union F, or for this set to occur, at least one of the event E or the event F must occur. Otherwise we cannot obtain the union. In case of the intersection of two events E and F, and the intersection of two events occur, which means that both of the event must occur. If one of them will occur and the second one will not, we cannot take the intersection. That is, we cannot take the common points. And if the event E complement occurs, which means that the event E does not occur. That is, either the event E complement will occur or the event E will occur. So if the complement of an event occurs, which means that that particular event will not occur. Now we have some very simple and basic properties of the set operations with respect to the events. Since we know that events are also sets and the subsets of our sample space S, they satisfy the following properties which we are going to write, along with the other properties of sets which we have discussed in our lecture 26, where we have discussed the properties of the intersection and union of two sets. Those properties and some more properties which we are going to see here. The first property says that if we have, let's say, three events E, F and G, then the first property says that if we take the union of two events, then the order does not matter. That is, either we take the union E union F or F union E, then the order does not matter. Similarly, if we take the intersection of two events, then again the order does not matter. And these two are called the commutative properties with respect to the union and intersection. Okay, if we have the union of two events and we want to take the complement of the union, then this is nothing but the intersection of the complements. That is, complement of the union of two events is equals to the intersection of the complements. and the complement of the intersection of two events is equals to the union of the complements of the events. Okay, if we have three events E, F and G and we are taking their union, then we may group them in any order we want. That is, either we take the union of F and G first, or we take the union of E and F first. The result is the same. And we have the same property for the case of intersection. That is, either we take the intersection of F and G first, or we take the intersection of E and F first, we obtain the same result. And this property is known as the associative property with respect to union and the associative property with respect to intersection. The fourth property we have, that we have the union of two events intersected with the third event. Then how we can simplify it? We take this is equal to the intersection of two events union with the intersection of the other two events. And if we interchange the sign of union with intersection, we obtained E union F intersection E union G. And these properties are known as the distributive properties of intersection over union and the distributive property of union over intersection. So these are very simple properties which the events satisfy, just like the other sets satisfy. Now we define another important term about events, which is the mutually exclusive events. We have a set of events and we say that this set of events is called mutually exclusive if the occurrence of one of the events stops the existence of the other events, or specifically the events E1, E2 up to En are mutually exclusive if the intersection of any event Ei with the event Ej is a null set for all I and j. So what do we mean by this? Suppose, let's say we have two events E and F, and we say that these events are mutually exclusive if their intersection is a null set, which means that these events have nothing in common, which actually means that if the event E occurs, then the event F will not occur, or if the event F occur, the event E will not occur. Or we can say that the events are mutually exclusive if they do not occur simultaneously. That is, the events E and F are mutually exclusive if they do not occur simultaneously, that is, both of them cannot occur at the same time, which means that their intersection will be a null set. For example, the complement of a set, the complement of an event and the event itself are mutually exclusive. That is, the complement E dash of an event and an event itself are mutually exclusive, which means that either the event will occur or its complement will occur. They cannot occur at the same time. Okay, if we consider the example of flipping a coin once, then our sample space contain 2 points, head and tail, and if we define our event E1 as head only, then this is our event containing the sample point H, and if we define our event E2 as tail only, then this will be our event containing the sample point T. And what will be the intersection of these two events? They have nothing in common, which means that their intersection is an empty set. So these two events are mutually exclusive. which means that either the event E1 will occur or the event E2 will occur, but they cannot occur both at the same time. That is, which is clear that either we will obtain a head or we will obtain a tail, but we cannot obtain both at the same time. If we consider our example of selecting 3 manufactured parts from a production process, and we were asked to find the possible outcomes of the 2 events, where the first event was having exactly 2 acceptable parts and the second event was having at least 1 defective part, then in this case our event E1 had the possible outcomes as AAD, ADA and DAA, and the possible outcomes for our event E2 was AAD, ADA, ADD, DAA, and we have 3 more, and DDD. Okay, now if you want to see that these events are mutually exclusive or not, which means that they should have nothing in common, but the first possible outcome is common to both the events, which means that these 2 events are not mutually exclusive. That is, their intersection is not an empty set, not mutually exclusive. We can also represent this mutually exclusive events with the help of a Venn diagram. That is, if this is our sample space S and we have 2 events E and F, then their intersection is empty, that is, they have nothing in common, and this is the Venn diagram of mutually exclusive events. And if the events are not mutually exclusive, as in the case of these 2 events, if this is our event E and this is our event F, then they have some portion in common, which means that their intersection is not an empty set, and these events are not mutually exclusive. We consider one more example of mutually exclusive events, in which a red and a green die are thrown and the numbers on each are noted. Then which of the following events are mutually exclusive or not, where the events are given as, the first event is that both the numbers on each die are even. The second event is that when both the numbers on each die are odd. Third event is given as the sum of numbers on both the dice is 2. Okay, the fourth event is given as when the sum of the numbers on both the die is 4, and fifth event is given as when the sum of the numbers on both the die is greater than 10. We recall that our sample space in this case has the possible outcomes in the form of ordered pairs as 1 1, 1 2, 1 3, and so on up to the possible outcomes 6 6, where the size of the sample space is 36. That is, we have 36 possible outcomes when we roll a pair of dice. And now we have to check that which of these following events are mutually exclusive or not. Then if we look at our first event E, which says that both the numbers on the die should be even, and our event F, which says that both the numbers on the die should be odd, then the event E has the possible outcomes as 2 2, 2 4, 4 4, and so on, and the event F has possible outcomes as 1 1, 1 5, 3 1 and so on, which means that these two events have nothing in common and they are mutually exclusive. Okay, now our event G. Event G says that the sum of the numbers on both the die is equals to 2, which means that the event has only one outcome. It is a simple event, that is 1 1. Only this possible outcome can result the sum of the numbers on both the die equal to 2. Then the intersection of this event with G is empty, because our event E has all the even numbers as outcomes. But the intersection of this event G with our event F is non-empty. It's not empty, which means that these two events are not mutually exclusive, because the event F has one possible outcome 1 1, which also occur in our event G. Okay, so far we have two events which are mutually exclusive. Now our event H. Event H is the event which is the sum of the numbers on both the dies equals to 4. So we have three possibilities. Either the first number is 1 and the second number is 3. Either the first number is 3 and the second number is 1. Or either the first number is 2 and the second number is also 2. So these possible outcomes result the sum of the numbers on both the dies equal to 4. And the intersection of this event with E will not be equals to empty, because this outcome 2 2 occurs in our event E. The intersection of this event with our event F will again be not mutually exclusive, because the other two outcomes are also the outcomes of our event F. But this event H has nothing in common with our event G, so these two events are mutually exclusive. Now our last event I. Our last event I is the set of all possible outcomes whose sum is greater than 10. Strictly greater than 10 means the outcome 5 5 is not allowed. So the possible outcomes are 3, which is 5 6, 6 5 and 6 6. The intersection of this event with event E is not mutually exclusive, because the 6 6 is also an outcome of our event E. The intersection of this event with our event F is mutually exclusive, because the other two possible outcomes do not have both the numbers as odd numbers. Okay, the intersection of this event I with our event G is also mutually exclusive, because these two events have nothing in common. Okay, the intersection of this event with event H is also nothing in common, so these are the possible events which are mutually exclusive, and the rest of the events are not mutually exclusive with each other. Now we define another concept related to the events, which is called as the collectively exhaustive events. By collectively exhaustive events we mean that is, we have a set of events, and if their union gives us the whole sample space, then that set of events is known as the collectively exhaustive events. That is, a set of events is said to be collectively exhaustive if their union accounts for all possible outcomes of an experiment, that is, their union is the whole sample space. We come back to our most simple and the basic example of flipping a coin once. Then our sample space contains two elements, head and tail, and our first event E1 is defined as head only, which is the outcome H, and the event E2 is defined as tail only, which is the outcome T, then these two events are mutually exclusive because they have nothing in common, but on the same side, but at the same time they are also collectively exhaustive because their union gives us the whole sample space S. If we consider another example of rolling a pair of dice, there the sample space has 36 sample points, okay, and we consider our event E as both the outcomes are even and our event F as both the outcomes or both the numbers are odd. Then we have already seen that these two events are mutually exclusive, that is, these two events have nothing in common. And are they collectively exhaustive as well? That is the union of these two events give us the whole sample space? Yes. If we take the union of all these events, we obtain our original sample space. So these two events are mutually exclusive as well as collectively exhaustive. We consider one more example in which we will be clear that what type of events can be mutually exclusive and what type of events can be collectively exhaustive. Suppose we consider a sample space of college admissions with sample points as MB, ML, ME, FB, FL and FE, where this M represents the sex of the student, that is male student taken admission in the college. F represents the female student. Actually, we have formulated our sample space taken into account 2 points, that is the sex of the students and the subjects in which they have taken admission, or the subjects they will study, where B is the business course, L is the law course and E is the engineering course. And we define our events either with respect to the subject or with respect to the sex. If capital M defines our events with respect to the sex, then it will contain the possible outcomes as MB, that is the male student studying business, male student studying law and male student studying engineering. Okay. We may also define an event E as based on the subject engineering. This will contain only 2 possible outcomes, that is a male student studying engineering and a female student studying engineering. Then we are given some events, that is the first event is given as MF, where the event M contains this sample points and the event F contains the sample points, that is a female student studying business, female student studying law and female student studying engineering. And we are asked to check that whether these two events are mutually exclusive or collectively exhaustive. Then if we take the intersection of these two events have nothing in common, so these two events are mutually exclusive. And if we take the union of these two events, then the union of these two events give us the whole sample space, which means that these two events defined with respect to the sex, that is with respect to the male student or with respect to the female student, are mutually exclusive as well as collectively exhaustive. Okay, for example, consider a collection of events as B, L and E. That is, here we have events defined with respect to the subject, where the event B contains the sample points male student studying business, female student studying business. The event L contains the sample points male student studying law, a female student studying law, and the event E contains the sample points male student studying engineering and the female student studying engineering. And we are asked to find that whether this collection of events is mutually exclusive or collectively exhaustive. Then the intersection of these three events gives us a null set, that is, these three events have nothing in common. That is, either the students will study business or law or engineering. And the union of these three events, give us the whole sample space, which means that these events are mutually exclusive as well as collectively exhaustive. Okay. Consider one more collection of events where we have the events MB, ML, ME and the event B. Okay, where the event MB contains is a simple event, that is, it contains only one sample point, that is a male student studying business. Similarly, is a simple event containing one sample point, that is a male student studying law, and the event ME containing the same sample point, a simple event. However, the event B contains the sample points, that is a male student studying business and a female student studying business. Then the intersection of these events intersection B is not an empty set, because the intersection of the event MB with the intersection of the event B is not empty, which means that these events are not mutually exclusive. And what about the union? The union of these events is not equals to our given sample space S, because by taking the union of these two events, we do not have the information of the female student studying law and the female student studying engineering. So the union of these events is not a sample space, which means that they are not collectively exhaustive. So now we have seen the example in which we were given the sample space and different collection of events, and by taking their intersection and the union, we have seen which particular events are mutually exclusive and which particular events are collectively exhaustive. We end our today's lecture here, and let us summarize what we have studied today. We have studied the definition of random experiment and the possible outcomes, the definition of sample space, trial and the notations of sample point, the classification of sample space as in terms of finite and infinite sample space. We have seen the notation of event and some examples related to it, and we have also seen how we can find the number of possible events from a given sample space. Some types of sample space, that is the some types of events, that is the simple event or the compound event, certain event and the impossible event. Then we have also seen some examples in which we have determined the size of a sample space, that is the number of possible outcomes. We have also seen the set operations and the properties of events, and in the end we have used these properties to define our mutually exclusive events and collectively exhaustive events. With this we end our today's lecture. In our next lecture we will study about the probability. With this, Allah Hafiz students.